Welcome to the Reach the Stars podcast, a collection of conversations with cool people who do cool things. Brought to you by Papercraft Miracles. Each week, we'll bring you inspiring stories of persistence, passion, and purpose. With your host, Jonna Willoughby-Lore.
Welcome to the Reach the Stars podcast. I am your host, Jonna Willoughby-Lore, and today my guest is Samantina Zenon, and she was named one of the most influential content creators by Shape. She is an actress, a mental health advocate, and a founder of WildSamFierce Shop. Welcome to the show, Samantina. Thank you for being here today. Do you want to tell everyone a little bit more about you and how you got here?
Thank you, Jenna. Thank you for having me. Well, a little bit about myself is, my name is Samantina, as she mentioned. I am a mental health advocate. I am an actress. I spend a lot of time having dialogues with people who has gone through childhood traumas to hopefully help them find healings. That's really what my main work is when it comes to mental health. And I also have a boutique called WildSamFierce Shop, and I am currently writing a book.
Awesome. That is so awesome. So I'm curious, what led you into wanting to do that kind of mental health work with other people?
What really led me to it is the things that I went through as a child, and the way I noticed they were affecting me as an adult. I started seeing a therapist when I was in college after I got fired from this job. I was being bullied, and I basically had this mental breakdown, and that was the beginning stage of me doing this self-development work. And I realized through my therapy sessions, a lot of my past traumas I was carrying them with me, and they were affecting everything that I was doing. And because life is a circle, we don't realize that. But I think it's important for us to be conscious of these things, to not repeat the same patterns of the things that broke us as children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting because I ended up doing this kind of mini series for the podcast about the topic of generational trauma, because just inadvertently over and over again throughout the interviews I was doing with people that were not intended to talk about that, so many people kept talking about experiences they had as kids that continued to affect them as adults and as parents, and the way that they parent kids and the way they interact with other people. So it just kind of led into this. And when I posted in a Facebook group saying, hey, anyone out there interested in talking about generational trauma? And then all of a sudden there was like hundreds of people who were like, I got something to say about that. So I have handpicked a bunch of people from that list, which is where this series of episodes has come from, which is how I got acquainted with Samantina in the first place. For those of you who have not listened to the other episodes and don't know that. So we're going to kind of dive a little bit deeper into what generational trauma means. And I think it can mean different things to different people. So what does it mean to you?
I mean, I think general trauma is anything that brings any discomfort in the home or feeling unsafe, relationship parents have with their kids. I think it's really a bunch of things combined. The thing is, I think the reason why it's so, people had a lot to say about it is because mental health was not something people discuss back in the day. Now it's becoming normal for some people, but there are still people who think it's only for crazy people who sees therapists or who are actually working on bettering themselves. I think that's where that trauma comes from. Part of it is cultural, like certain culture follows specific cultural pattern or rules, like such as arranged marriage or whatever it is. So all of these things can create unhealthy, toxic relationships.
I'm also curious to know, what your experience is as far as feeling stigma about addressing mental health issues in different communities, and how that has affected your work doing mental health work with young people.
Right. So the thing is, many people will label you. Oh yeah, you're crazy. You don't know what you're talking about. It's not that bad. They often, one thing that I noticed, I know for myself, when I first started working on my self-development myself before I could even talk to people about it, when I spoke to people about some of the things that I was feeling, they dismissed it, they avoided it, they basically made it seem like I was exaggerating or I didn't know what I was talking about. And those are horrible feelings because, especially if you're going through something that's painful to you, and, you know, there are times you just want somebody to listen to you. You don't want somebody to fix it because obviously that person may not be able to fix it. But sometimes you just need somebody to listen to you. And when you can't find that, that can really build that wall to not even want to branch out, to not even want to tell your story, to just basically think it's the world that's the problem. It's not the things that you experienced as a child that's really causing you to feel the way you feel.
Exactly. And I mean, even as someone who I know that I personally have crazy amounts of privilege in my life in a lot of ways. And even earlier this year, I started seeing a therapist, and I didn't even want to tell my husband about it until after I had started going through therapy and talking to my therapist about it. Not necessarily that I was ashamed about it, but I guess maybe I was, that I just didn't want him to know that I was not handling everything really well, and that I had things that I needed to talk to somebody about that wasn't talking to him about, and stuff like that. And there can be a lot of just kind of shame and stigma around not being okay. And I think one of the most valuable lessons that any of my friends or family have taught me in my life was that it's okay to not be okay. And it is something that, because of my own trauma as a child, my childhood was kind of crazy, and I got to experience a lot, but I also was shuffled around from house to house a lot of times, and really felt like I was very independent really early. And I didn't really feel like I could bring my issues or my problems or not be okay in a lot of situations, because I felt like I was responsible for me, and I was the one that was taking care of other people. And so it's something that I know that I really struggle to fight back against, is reminding myself over and over and over that it's okay to not be okay with whatever's happening to me, and not just put up this front and this shield and pretend that everything's fine when it's not.
Yeah, I mean, we live in a world where women have to be independent. I don't know, if you notice this in any situation, people will make excuses for men. But if it's a woman, people tend to be harsher. It's because we're supposed to be the superwoman. We're supposed to know how to do everything. It's cultural. It's part of it is cultural. Part of it is just how society think, because that's what we're used to. And so that's why we have to just basically suffer in silence because of that. And to me, that's just one of those red flags to me in relationships in general. If I have to pretend like I'm okay all the time, I can't be myself around you, or if I share something vulnerable about my life with you and you don't take it seriously, or you try to use it against me, I don't need those kind of friends in my life. I don't need those kind of family members in my life. I don't need those kind of boyfriends in my life. So, as I mentioned earlier, I think it's definitely a generational thing, because I was with a guy, an older man, earlier this week, and I was talking to him about mental health, and earlier this week, last weekend. I was talking to him about mental health, and he said, no, psychology therapy is for weak people. I had to pause and literally educate this man. I'm like, we are in a pandemic. Do you know how much that's affecting a lot of people? It doesn't matter if you don't like people. We all need that human contact. So for you to even think therapy is for crazy people is ridiculous. And he kind of took his words back, and he said, well, maybe I missaid, or whatever he said. I missaid what I said. And I'm like, yeah, please rephrase that, because you sound crazy for saying something like that.
Exactly. Pre-COVID, there was plenty of people who thought they had a handle on life, and then COVID happened and that handle just broke right off. People who had never had any issues before are all of a sudden developing like agoraphobia and anxiety and PTSD and plenty of other issues. So anyone who had issues they were trying to deal with before COVID, everything has just been like exacerbated so much more. And it's crazy that even in this time where there's such an obvious need for so many people to have access to therapy, that there are even fewer therapists available for people to meet with. I mean, I have great health insurance. I pay a lot for it, but I have great health insurance. And I made my appointment with my therapist in November, and I didn't even get to talk to her until January. I was like waiting for more than 2 months to talk to somebody. And so for someone who doesn't have insurance coverage that would cover a therapist, like how long are they going to wait? Forever. And they're never going to do it because they can't afford it. And it's just crazy how there is so little access to something that is so necessary for so many people. And not only is there lack of access, but then there's like stigma and all this on top of it. And, we wonder why we have this kind of dysfunctional society of people who, bully each other online and can't talk to each other face to face because they don't know how to do that anymore. And, it just,
I mean, granted, I feel like part of it is also the way some people are brought up, because, talking back to parents is disrespectful. And some people have never really learned to address things because they're like, oh my God, it may blow out of proportion. They automatically assume the worst out of the situation as opposed to just like, let's just have a grown up conversation. Mm-hmm. And I personally can say something that I'm still working on right now. Like I had to learn to express myself where I don't feel like people are attacking me, because it can feel like that sometimes, because some people's attention can be like, to try to make you feel bad for saying something or trying to make you feel stupid. There's just a lot of hurt people out there, and I had to learn that the hard way and not take things personal. But, if somebody's trying to make you feel dumb or because they don't understand what you're saying, tell them this is exactly what I mean, and explain to them this is what I'm trying to tell you. Just like that guy when I brought up mental health to him, he basically made it seem like mental health was for crazy people. I took that time to educate him as opposed to go off and say like, are you crazy? Like, this conversation could have gone 2 different ways, but I choose to tell him what it is and explain to him, this is the world that we're living in. And we're going through a pandemic. So people are going through things. Don't sit up here and make it seem like it's a crazy, he didn't say it was a crazy thing, people thing. He said it was a weak people thing. So you have to be weak to see a therapist. So I had to correct him.
Exactly. And, like when there is so much stigma and cost and inaccessibility. I mean, I personally think that like anyone who is still, fighting against all of these hardships to get to therapy, anyone who's seeking out therapy despite the obstacles is not at all weak, because it is not an easy thing to do, to admit that you need help and then to figure out a way to fit it in your schedule and to fit it in your budget to be able to afford it. That's anything but weak, is to like take a risk like that on healing yourself, so that you can be a better person for other people too. It's a crazy world out there that like everybody needs to.
I mean, I personally feel like if everybody can hold themselves accountable to be a better version of themselves, we would have a really better world, honestly. And the thing is, in America, speaking about psychology and therapy and, healing from your traumas, it's becoming some sort of normal. But other countries, they don't even know what that means. Mm-hmm. The toxic, violent way of using a woman, kids, all of that, it's normal to them because that's what they used to. And their government or whoever it is that's in charge is not really trying to educate them about that, because it's more about, I'm in charge of you type of thing. It's like this power tripping thing a lot of these leaders have. They're not really trying to heal. They're not really trying to create a better population or better society for their people and the kids. Like the kids grow up in violence and they grow up to be the same way. Mm-hmm. Boy. Yeah. And that's really one of the reasons why I like talking about these things. Because the thing is, when you put things on the internet, people can see it and they live on the internet forever. And I want anybody around wherever they are in this world, they see this video, I want them to start becoming more conscious. Like I want therapy, healing yourself from traumas to be a normal conversation. I want people to be more conscious of that so they don't keep repeating that same pattern, because it's bad out there.
Exactly. And, like if people never learn to address, things that hurt them as children, and then they grow up, and then they either have their own kids or they interact with other people, and they pass those harmful traits on to their children or somebody else's children or somebody else, then there's no healing from that. And it just perpetuates, like there's so many, there's, exactly, the pattern continues, like there's the parents who had kids in the 80s who were like, oh, well, our kids didn't need seat belts back in the day, so it was fine. And you're like, but there's a better way to do it. We've learned there, like a lot of kids died in the car, so we made better car seats and seat belts and stuff like that, like in that same way. It's, yes, you thought it was fine to like hit your kids in the 70s, but we realized through lots of studies that is harmful, and it causes problems in mental health and physical health in those kids when they grow up. And like letting babies cry it out and things like that. Like they've done all these studies and found that there are real mental and physical harms that are put on children when the parents treat them that way when they're little. So, now that we've learned these things, to know them and then not make changes is, I just think it's so irresponsible for people to ignore things that we have learned scientifically about human development and how we can be a better people as a whole. Like kids don't learn to bully on their own. Somebody teaches them that, and the more that people recognize that exactly same thing, like, kids learn racism from parents. Kids learn classism from their parents, and sexism from their parents and the adults that are around them. And if the adults aren't willing to recognize where they've made a mistake, and to make efforts to correct that, and then what kind of world are we growing into, where kids are going to grow up not only knowing these harmful things, but also being afraid and ashamed to admit when they've made a mistake and they didn't know something.
I definitely agree with all of the things that you're saying. And I do want people who are having kids right now or who already have kids to understand that you are your kid's role model. Because if you bully your kids, they're going to go out there and think it's okay to do it to somebody else. And they may think it's funny. Like, it's not funny to torture anybody, but if that's what they're experiencing at home, why would you expect for them to do different? So parents really need to understand that you are your kid's first role model. It doesn't matter if they like these big celebrities that they see on television. At the end of the day, your kids watch everything you do in your home, and they practice that. So parents really need to be mindful of that.
Exactly. And it's crazy how there's so many things just built into our society that perpetuate sexism, especially, and like lack of consent with children and things like that, like forcing little kids to, hug that creepy uncle if they don't want to, just because that person is an adult, like that, all that is teaching that kid that they don't have autonomy over their body and that they should be able to do that to somebody else too. And so I've been working really hard on teaching my sons about consent. I mean, they're 5 and 3 years old, but they know if like somebody's playing tick-a-war and they say, no, you have to stop immediately. If someone doesn't want you to touch their body, you stop immediately. And you say, I'm sorry for touching you when you didn't want to be touched, and I won't do it again. And, it's just little things like that you can instill in kids when they're small. So hopefully when my sons are grown up in college and they see somebody doing something inappropriate to some other woman, that they will step in and say, that's not right. She told you no, you don't have consent, and that's how we stop rapists in the future, is like teaching children now what is and what is not consent, like letting them know that they have autonomy over their bodies and things like that, just making little changes like that. It doesn't have to be like huge, massive changes in the way you do everything, but just noticing little things like that. I mean, I never thought about that when I was growing up, that girls are typically trained to kind of be obedient and be avoidant of certain situations. It's like, oh, you were asking for this because you had your skirt was too short, or you shouldn't dress in a tank top with little skinny straps at school because it's distracting for the boys. And I'm like, no, you need to teach the boys that they need to not treat women like objects instead of forcing women to control their own outfits for the sake of somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, it's so crazy. Yeah, it's so weird because, like, there are guys. I mean, there was this one time this father said, okay, so I was working at this place one time, and this young man, he was a teenager. He's literally winking at everybody, including one of the staff member, and which was ridiculous. He was just being weird. Because I'm like, why are you touching this woman? She's a petite woman. She's short, but she's still a grown woman. And you, like 13, why are you like touching this woman? And, it was very uncomfortable. And the staff member addressed the parent and told him, like, we have girls that comes here also. We can't have him touching and saying inappropriate things. The father said, well, he's a boy. That was his excuse. Well, he's a boy. What do you want me to do? And I'm like, are you kidding me? You literally said he's a boy, and that should make it okay for him to touch people inappropriately. Like, you literally training this, you setting him up to be in jail. Like, by the time he's like, God knows, 17 or 18. Because you didn't even bother correcting him. You just made that excuse he's a boy. As if every single boy out there is out here touching people. Like, no. That was ridiculous to me. I could not even believe he said that. So long story short, they ended up not having him come back to the center. It was a place where they tutor students. I was just like, we can't be liable for somebody who's being a boy, because we have other boys that come here, they don't behave like that. So yeah,
exactly. Like that whole phrase, boys will be boys. It just gives so much leeway for things that are not appropriate, and just saying, oh, they're just going to do their thing. You have to deal with it, as opposed to like, we should educate. Like it's taking away not only responsibility, but culpability on men. And also saying that boys and men are not capable of understanding right from wrong, which is bullshit. Like, they're perfectly capable of understanding what's right and wrong.
And also, like I said, you're setting your kid up for failure, because when they go out there and behave like that, do you think people are going to say, well, he's just a boy, let me let it go? No, you're going to come across people who will literally take real action. Then that could end up to some bad things, whether he ended up in jail or somebody may hurt him, because you never train him to respect other people or respect other people's boundary. Mm-hmm. And that's not good parenting to me. I don't have any kids, but to me, that's just like, that's setting your kid up for failure. And as a parent, you need to prepare your kid for the real world, because your kid's going to come across different people, and everybody's not going to just say boys will be boys.
Exactly. Especially not in this era of Me Too. Thank God. So I don't want to run out of time. I want to make sure we have time for our 5 questions. So it's 5 question time. The first question is, tell me about an experience that shaped who you are today. My first day to therapy, after I had my mental breakdown in college, I knew my school had a psychology department. I went there, I filled out that questionnaire. After my first session, I was in tears because we started talking about something. No, actually, after my first session, I was like, I need to come back. I was so curious to find out what else is going on in my world, because I'm feeling like crap. I just need a better outcome. That was what I was thinking. So that was the beginning of that journey for me. And I ended up seeing that therapist for 3 years consecutively. And that was such a process of painful memories. But the thing is, I realized that these painful things that I went through, because I never talked about them, they were actually holding me back. They were why I was going through the things that I was going through. So once I was able to take a hold of them, they were not able to control me anymore or hurt me, because people can't use something against you that you're already in control of, basically. So that really taught me a valuable lesson, that first therapy session. That's amazing. I'm so glad that you got to do that. Number 2, when you feel defeated or overcome, what do you tell yourself to keep going?
Oh my God. First of all, negative thoughts are just inevitable. They just come in your head. I have a journal. If I accomplish something that I'm proud of, I write it down. So the days that I'm like having all these negative thoughts, or I find myself comparing myself with other people, I literally will go to my journal and read it. You are doing good right now. You just need some work here. Like, I literally have to consistently remind myself, because these negative thoughts are real and they come they come all the time. They come all the time. That's why you hear people talking about FOMOs all the time, because we find ourselves comparing ourselves with somebody we know, but we don't know that person's story. We don't know how they get there. So we can't, or if that person even have what they claiming they have. So we can't just allow our brain to play that mind tricks on us where we're comparing ourselves without really seeing the full picture. It's all how you frame things, honestly. So yeah, writing things down, the good things that I'm proud of, and consistently remind me of them and read them when I need that reminder when I'm not feeling my best.
I love that. That is such a good idea. Okay, number 3. Tell me about a way you overcame a failure or a mistake and what you learned from it.
Okay, I think before I involve in any situation, I like to think of, how will this benefit me? Like, will I learn from it? Like, I feel like you have to be strategic, because you don't want to get yourself in a situation that's not really helping you anyway, or that's reminding you of your past, or that makes you feel unsafe. So the best way that I try to approach everything is to always think of the benefits. Like, what will I get out of it at the end of it? Like, what's the end goal? So I think since I've been approaching things like that, I have been able to be on a better track than just going through things without really realizing how things may end up bad. Yeah. I don't know if I answered the question, but
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 4, what one trait or habit is most responsible for keeping you on track?
I think being determined. I think being a determined person will always keep you going, because when you're a determined person, you can always think of, well, I already started. I'm not even where I want to be in life. So why should I stop here? Because I always think, like, I've already done all this work. I've already worked so hard to be where I am today. It makes no sense to give up now, because if I give up now, basically all the work that I did was a waste of time. And you can't get back time. And that's what I always have to remind myself whenever I feel like giving up. And also give myself a break when I'm like, because you don't want to always overwork yourself or overthink things, because when you do that, that also does not help you. So there are times I'm just like, okay, I need a break. Maybe a week. I'm not going to think, like, if I'm working on something, I need a mental break. I'm not going to think about it for a week. I'm not going to work on it for a week or 2 days or whatever it is. And then when I come back to it, I come back to with a fresh mind, and often makes me think better. Like, it's like a slate in a way. You're starting where you left off, but with a clean slate. So I would say determination.
I love it. Okay, number 5. What's the best piece of advice you've ever gotten, and what advice would you give other people?
The best piece of advice. One of my mentors in college said to me, when you're focused, you are brilliant. That was exactly what she said to me. And I'm like, what? So I always think of that whenever I'm not feeling my best. That's why I said there are times I have to take a break, because I don't want to not be brilliant like my mentor told me. So, oh my God, if you hear dog barking in the background, that's my window's open because my house gets hot. But yeah, that was the best piece of advice. When you're focused, you're brilliant. So it reminds me to stay focused. And also when I'm not feeling like I can focus, to take a break, to come back with my 2020 vision. The best piece of advice I can give somebody will definitely be, this is a motto that I live by. And that's a quote that I created for myself. And the items that I sell in my store, in the WildSamFierce shops, there are some of them that says it on it. It says, in my own skin, I will always win. I truly believe in that quote. There's absolutely no reason for me to pretend to be something that I'm not to please other people. I personally feel like I would do myself a disservice if I don't show up my own authentic self, because part of doing the work that I do is to also inspire people with my story. I want people to be comfortable to tell their story of triumph and work towards that triumph moment for them. So in my own skin, I'll always win. Show up with my my flaws, and not be afraid to be vulnerable, and really let that take over and let that touch people and help people, inspire people to make those changes that they need in their lives. Honestly.
Oh, I love it. Will you tell everyone a little bit more about your shop and the type of stuff that you sell there, and where your shop is and how they can find it?
Yeah, so basically, so let me show you. This is one of the sweaters in my shop. The bottom says Daring Dreamer. So basically the whole idea was I'm really big on affirmations. So I write a lot of affirmations in my diary. So normally I basically design quotes. I basically create an artwork that goes with the quote, and that's basically what this is. So as you can see on this shirt, it's a train track going in the sky, but it's going infinitely. So that's my representation of somebody who's a daring dreamer, somebody who's just, not just doing everything that people tell them they can do. That's my definition of that. The store is called WildSamFierce Shop, and you can check it out. You can find it on the website is wildsamfierceshop.com, and on social media it's at WildSamFierce Shop.
That is awesome. So weird coincidence. I have had this kind of tattoo wish list of tattoos that I want to get someday. And one of them is a train track that you can't see where it's going. And as soon as I saw your shirt, I had goosebumps all over, because I was like, that's the picture in my head that's on your shirt right now.
Good.
And I haven't decided where on my body I want to get it, but that's the picture. And I've thought of a couple of different options.
Put it on wherever you need to.
I've thought of a couple different options of how I wanted it, where I wanted to get it. Like I was thinking of getting it so that when I put my arms together, you can see it. So each arm would have half of it.
Oh, cool.
Something like that. But I haven't felt like that's the spot yet. So that's why I haven't gotten it as a tattoo. But it's so weird that as soon as I seriously was like, oh my God, it's my picture. So I am totally going to go and check out the WildSamFierce Shop and get me some stuff, because apparently you're hanging out in my energy brain space.
Awesome. Yeah, crazy. You see how energy works?
I love it. I love this show. So thank you so much for being here today. I could talk to you all day, but I can't, because we both have to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
But maybe we'll come back and we'll do a part 2, because everyone I've talked to about this is curious to watch the other episodes, and then maybe we'll come and revisit and continue the conversation amongst all the people that I've interviewed. And I think that would be really cool. So thank you so much for being here. All the links to Samantina's shop and her website and everything will be in the show notes. If you love this show, please give us a review on iTunes, subscribe on the YouTube, give us the thumbs up, share to your friends and family. That would be great. And yeah, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I had a great time, and I'm glad we're having these conversations.
So apparently my own video is now frozen. My computer is just frozen and it won't let me hang up. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Have a great night. Have a great day. Have a great night. Have a great weekend, weekdays, whatever.
Yes. Thanks so much for being here on the Reach the Stars podcast. Sorry, Ryan, you're going to have to edit this out later.
Bye.
A single interaction has the power to change your life forever. This is a place for the stories of those moments. Stories of pursuing dreams, overcoming tragedy and failure, of coming back to life after so much of what feels like dying, of continuing on with only a vision as a map. This is the place where those moments live on. Come sit by the fire, look up at the stars, and be forever changed too.
Thank you for being with us on the Reach the Stars podcast. Our theme music is generously provided by Byrocratic. You can find him on bandcamp.com. Thank you to all of our current patrons, guests, and everyone else who helps make this dream a reality. We are so proud to be building this amazing community with all of you. If you love this podcast, please consider sharing with a friend, leaving a review on iTunes, and becoming a patron at www.patreon.com/reachthestars. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel to see the videos of these conversations. We'll see you next week. In the meantime, do something cool and tell us about it.